Hi, it's Steve and Joe from Fresh Agenda. And Steve, we thought we'd take it outside today, give a little bit of a view of the scene here in Melbourne. It's pretty quiet in the city these days, but we also thought we'd have a quick tour through a few different issues. Just a quick one this week, I think.
Think so.
Yeah. Firstly, what's happening with milk values across different regions? I suppose here in Australia, we post our commodity milk value for Australia every week, and a few people have commented that it's staying very high.
So there's a comparison we've got of US. We put class 3 milk values there. Europe, New Zealand, and Australia. Australia is pretty much unmoved.
Yeah.
And the Australian dollar, sinking Australian dollar's got a bit to do with that, a lot to do with that. But also cheese values haven't fallen in local quotes. You can see obviously the sudden dip in US cheese milk values, and the US not as dramatic. But
the EU not as dramatic.
The EU not as dramatic, correct. New Zealand also has fallen slightly, but being held up by the value of the importance of whole milk powder in that mix.
Yeah, and I guess timing really is everything, because obviously in this part of the world there's not much milk around, there's not a lot of product to trade, so those spot quotes have been pretty resilient compared to what we're seeing happening in the Northern Hemisphere ahead of that spring peak in production. Yeah,
true. Look, the US obviously more impacted by the fact that there is a much bigger food service exposure, and I guess the portion of cheese that's in that export market which is looking more fragile. But neither US and, as you say, not yet at their peak. So not a lot can move away from cheese to milk powder at this point.
Yep.
There isn't the capacity to take that.
That's right. So we are seeing the stories about dumping, particularly in the US, as a result of those capacity issues. But I suppose the big question there is, can New Zealand and Australia remain immune? And we think not.
No, we think this will come later in the year when cheese export shares start to shift. And that cheddar export price out of this region becomes exposed to that. We'll see that move down. But some of the views on regional milk prices here reflect some of that reality. We're not putting ours out yet into that space. Let's wait and see how long this remains.
I guess the other side of it is we're seeing the futures market in the US factor in a bit of a recovery, assuming, I suppose, that things open up in the second half of this year in terms of that food service sector.
Yeah, and that chart, of course, could just drift to the right, so that J effect could just
keep
play
moving
out further, depending on that. But the expectation is there's a recovery. This is a temporary issue. It's just how temporary. Will we see that? But what we're doing to, I suppose, measure this effect is looking at there's a number of impacts, and what we're again upgrading the level of detail in our dairy trade simulator to reflect this. But as we described last time, what we're I guess looking at the shares between food service and retail, getting a bit more of a handle on that, looking at what's happening with monthly demand as we see that play out from here. So as information arrives, as estimates get a bit more refined, that'll continue to evolve between the peak impact, as we're seeing total shutdowns now, and as those lockdowns become rollbacks, new terminology coming into this, and gradually as we get later in the year into really what is the recession effect or the depression effect, depends who you believe, on net demand. So this varies for cheese and butter because there are different exposures, and varies between the US and Europe.
Sure.
So we've got different scenarios for each of these which users can play with. That has a net impact on disappearance over this period, and then how much will actually shift in terms of product mix. So a lot of different layers. The other thing to bring into here is the fact that cream also impacted, and quite a bit of that's going to be churned to butter. So that's a double whammy for the butter complex, and that will no doubt reflect later. And then, of course, the milk supply response. Both combination of supply management measures as well as the impact of dumping. So we can flavour in both. Where this leads us to in our projections is the ability to project monthly balance sheets in Europe and US for cheese, skim milk powder, and butter.
Yeah, and clearly with those variables all together in our COVID dashboard, you can actually look at a whole lot of different scenarios around those factors.
Yeah, and you can model this, and I guess building scenarios is the key here. It's not about forecasting. Forecasting is wild and unruly right at this point in time, but it's building scenarios most plausible, giving the information that's going to keep taking shape as we go.
Yeah, and that's changing daily. So yeah.
So finishing up, Joe, you've got a chart of the week.
Yeah, chart of the week is about US commercial disappearance, and it does seem like ancient history because we're looking at February data. So this was back in the last century when we weren't all locked in our homes. But you can see there was already fairly weak trends there for American cheese, just reflecting what were very strong prices at that time.
Yeah.
And butter was also under a fair bit of pressure in terms of demand there, Steve.
Yeah, that was showing through. High prices pushed both those down because late last year when this demand would have been written, when the orders were being written, these were very high prices for cheese and butter. So that's shown up here. And food service, though, was also building.
Yep.
So it seems so long ago now.
It does. But still interesting trends. So obviously that other cheese category with mozzarella in it
now destroyed.
Yes. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, that's all we have this week. Come back next week. Anyone want to get in touch with us, there's how you can do that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.